Elena, is Grandpa doing okay? Rosie, well, he's getting there. He hurt his leg, and, you know how it is with older folks, they can be a real handful. Sometimes, I wish they'd think about the people who are left to care for them. Elena, Rosie, that's not a very kind way to put it. Rosie, I'm just being honest. He's not in great shape, and it's getting harder to deal with, but you're used to it, so you'll manage. The other day, my husband's grandfather, Oscar, fell in the garden and hurt his leg. Rosie, it's not a serious injury, but at 82, we're keeping him in bed to be cautious. Don't want it to turn into something worse. My mother-in-law won't even go near him, let alone help him. I'm Elena, 30 years old. I've been married to my husband, James, for 3 years. We live with his family, in a house that's been passed down through generations. James used to be my boss at the company where I worked, a business founded by his grandfather. I joined 8 years ago when my father-in-law, Dylan, was already president, and his father, Grandpa, was still chairman. At that time, Grandpa was still running things, taking care of the most important tasks, but when he turned 80, he started stepping back, handing over most of the public-facing duties to Dylan. Dylan, Oscar, you've done more than enough. Let me take care of things now. You deserve to relax. My mother-in-law smiled, but there was something sharp about her tone. Grandpa is a proud, stubborn man, but he's always been fair and compassionate, with a strong reputation. In contrast, Dylan has always struck me as somewhat immature, unreliable, and easily swayed by my mother-in-law. He never voices his own opinions and does whatever she tells him to do. Grandpa's wife, my grandmother-in-law, passed away before I married into the family, so I never had the chance to meet her. James and I started dating 3 years after I joined the company. Though he had a strong presence, his leadership could sometimes feel overbearing. I probably noticed it more than others because I had lost my father early and was raised by my mother alone. 2 years ago, my mother fell ill, and I had to quit my job to take care of her. I'm lucky that Grandpa supported me during that time. Grandpa, it's only right that you care for your mother. Don't worry about anything else. Take care of her. Thanks to his encouragement, I was able to be with her until she passed, without worrying about finances. Though my mother-in-law seemed a little displeased with the situation, I'll always be grateful to Grandpa. But since Grandpa stepped back from the company, the family's attitude toward him has shifted. It's as though they don't value his opinions anymore, and I can't help but feel they're treating him with less respect. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but when I watched my mother-in-law and husband interact with Grandpa, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were deliberately ignoring him. Dylan's behavior is passive, almost as if Grandpa no longer matters now that he's out of the spotlight. Elena, don't you think you're being a bit cold toward Grandpa? Rosie, and you too, James? Rosie, what's the big deal? Elena, Grandpa tries to engage with you, and you barely acknowledge him. You don't even make an effort to help him. James, I don't have time for this. You can look after Grandpa. You're the one with the free time. Elena, there's no need to talk like that. James, enough. I'm tired from work. Stop nagging me about pointless things. This is how it always goes. No matter what I say, they just ignore me. Grandpa never complains, though. Now, I'm the only one who talks to him at home. Elena, Grandpa, it's such a lovely day. How about we take a short walk outside? Your leg looks like it's healing well, and some fresh air might help with your recovery. Grandpa, thank you. I'd love that. We went to the park, where families with young children were playing. Grandpa smiled as he watched them. Grandpa, Dylan and James used to enjoy times like that too. I was always so busy with work that I didn't have much time to be with them. Maybe that's why I didn't raise them the way I would have liked. He said this softly, almost as if speaking to himself, with a hint of sadness in his eyes. Dylan is my father-in-law, and James is my husband. I couldn't help but wish everyone would show more kindness to Grandpa, but I didn't know how to make them see it. And then, my in-laws suggested that we build a house for Grandpa. I turned to my father-in-law, feeling as though he was my only option left. Yeah, I heard from Rosie and James. They think it could be dementia. Can you come to the hospital with us? I asked. But it's not that bad yet, is it? If we go to the hospital, everyone will know about Dad's condition, he replied, hesitating. There are treatments now that can slow it down, I urged. Let's not rush it. We can watch him a little longer. Elena's here, so he'll be fine, right? His dismissive response only deepened my frustration. I couldn't rely on them to help. Grandpa, please, let's go to the hospital and get you checked out, I insisted. He looked at me, eyes clouded with confusion. Who are you? Where are you taking me? You're up to something, he snapped. Tears welled up in my eyes as I watched him become more and more stubborn. The man I once knew slipping away. My mother-in-law, however, just laughed. Even if he was the chairman, it's over for him now. Everything, including the company, is Dylan's now, she said, almost casually. Rosie, Grandpa can still hear you. He understands everything you're saying, I protested. He won't for long. Soon he'll forget everything, he'll wander, drool. Just thinking about it makes me sick. He's a nuisance now, she added, with no hint of remorse. I was seething. How can you say that? Grandpa has dedicated his entire life to this family. Her words stung like poison, but Grandpa simply smiled, unaware of the hurt they caused. See, he doesn't understand anything anymore, she said, laughing at him. The cruelty in her voice made me want to shout, but I held it in. The new house was almost ready, and I clung to the hope that things might improve once we moved. Maybe then, the family would show some gratitude and kindness toward Grandpa, especially since it was his house. 2 months later, the house was finally completed. 4 days, I had been packing up my in-laws' and husband's things, while my own belongings, along with my father-in-law's, remained untouched. Every time I tried to make progress, my in-laws and husband assigned me more tasks, effectively preventing me from getting anything done. I figured I could pack up the smaller items later. After all, the house wasn't going anywhere. On moving day, after most of the belongings had been transferred, I went to find my father-in-law, but before I could reach him, James stepped in front of me. You and Grandpa can stay here, he said, flatly. What? I asked, confused. You'll stay here. We don't need any extra baggage in the new house. So, you and Grandpa will live here from now on, he continued, casually. Oh, and we'll be passing Grandpa's debt on to you. You can at least be useful as a housekeeper. Wait, let's go. Yeah, I'm coming. Good luck with the debt and the live-in care, he called over his shoulder. My in-laws left, cheerfully unaware of how stunned I was. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Were we abandoned? Were only they going to live in the new house? It took a moment to sink in. This was beyond cruelty. How could they do this? How could they treat us like this? And how could I explain it to Grandpa? Slowly, I walked back to the back room. I had no issue caring for Grandpa, that was what I had intended all along, but the betrayal still stung. As I prepared to speak to him, I saw his back turned toward me. He must have sensed my presence because he turned to face me, and before I could say a word, he asked, "Have they left already?" His voice, his face, they were so different from just a few months ago. In that moment, he felt like a stranger. I wondered if something had changed in him, but before I could question it further, he smiled, and his next words took me completely off guard. As I was speaking to Grandpa, a man named Mr. Jones entered the room. "Chairman, have you finished dismissing the unnecessary staff?" he asked. "Yes, it's all taken care of," Grandpa replied, a knowing look in his eyes. "Shall we go now?" "Go where?" "To the new house." "Of course," Grandpa said, turning to leave. I followed, still not fully understanding what was happening. Why was Grandpa acting like this? What was unfolding before me? But I had no choice but to go with him, unsure of what lay ahead. This version aims to bring more emotional depth to Elena's feelings and experiences, creating a more natural flow of dialogue and reflecting the confusion and betrayal she feels in this situation. Let me know if you'd like any further adjustments.